Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to attend our seminar on making the most of retirement investments, where Dr. Chambers will discuss both traditional and Roth IRAs. My name is Nate Burston, Senior Portfolio Manager and Head of Trading with Biltmore Capital Advisors. We are an SEC-registered investment advisor with offices in Princeton, New Jersey, and Boca Raton, Florida, providing financial planning and wealth management solutions. Biltmore Capital's suite of services include comprehensive investment strategies, including tactical asset allocation, retirement planning, income and asset protection, and here at Biltmore, we make sure to have the appropriate family conversations to ensure your legacy is safe and secure. Should you have any questions, there's a calendar link in the chat box to schedule a complimentary call with one of our senior members of our team. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Donald Chambers, who will be speaking to us about making the most of retirement investments. Dr. Chambers has a PhD in finance and has published 6 books, written over 50 articles, and done countless webinars to help educate people in finance. Biltmore Capital has been lucky to have him on our team for over 5 years now, and you can find some of his previous informational seminars on our website, biltmorecap.com. That's BILTMORECAP.com. Again, if you have any additional questions or would like to schedule a complimentary review with one of our senior advisors, please click on the calendar link in the chat section. At this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Chambers.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you, everybody, for attending this webinar. I'll try to make it lively and informative. The 3 sample questions that we're going to be talking about today are when you should prefer to contribute into a Roth IRA, and when you should prefer to use a traditional IRA. The second one is when would you want, if you had to withdraw money, you usually don't want to take this out till you have to, when would you want to pull the money out of a Roth IRA, and when would you want to pull it out of a traditional IRA? And very key, when might be a good time for you to convert from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. That's a taxable movement of money from inside a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA. That's a sample of the issues that we're going to be talking about. For brevity's sake, a lot of times I might just use the word IRA to refer to a traditional IRA, and a Roth, I'll just say Roth to refer to a Roth IRA. And in some of the slides, it'll just say Roth or IRA. They're both IRAs, but usually we just call them Roths. Versus in traditional IRAs, we usually just call IRAs. These smaller issues are the questions are emblematic of what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, the focus here is going to be on taxes. And those of you that have heard my other webinars or listened to me before, and I urge you to go to our website and listen to some of these webinars. The 3 things that I think investors should most worry about, should focus their attention on. Number 1 is to make sure they take the proper type and level of risk, a well-diversified, appropriately risky portfolio. Risk is number 1. But number 2, in my opinion, is taxes. And number 3 is fees. We want to minimize taxes, and number 3, minimize fees. And I think a lot of people focus too much on trying to time the market or do security selection. I find that wealth is best accumulated, wealth is best managed by a focus on the issues that I just named, which is risk, taxes, and fees, and not trying to do too much with regard to security selection and market timing. So a couple terms to get started with. I'm going to talk a lot about tax deductibility, and a tax deductibility is the ability to deduct an item such as an IRA contribution from your current income tax. Of course, I put in that this is not just an ability to claim a deduction, but it's really just delaying the taxes, because when you contribute to an IRA, it's reducing your income tax now, but it's increasing your income tax or the income taxes of your heirs sometime later. That's what tax deductibility is. But IRAs also offer tax deferral. And the tax deferral is that once you get a money into a Roth or a traditional IRA, you don't have to pay income taxes on the interest and the dividends, the investment income, until you withdraw it, which might be 20, 30, 40. It could literally be through inheritances 100 years from now that you'd have to pay taxes on investment income. That's tax deferral, and tax deferral of taxes on investment income is useful. Traditional IRAs offer deductibility and deferral, but Roths only offered deferral. A lot of people think that this deduction for a traditional IRA is really valuable. You don't want to give that up. I hope that you'll temper that attitude after you listen to everything I have to say today, because remember, an IRA, that deduction you're getting on the IRA this year is going to have to, at some point, that money is going to be pulled out, and hopefully it will have grown a lot, and then you'll be paying taxes on that larger amount. So we want to be careful about this idea that tax deductibility is a good thing. We'll talk about that more a little later. So here's the example, in fact, of why putting your money into an IRA and getting a deduction today, rather than putting it into a Roth IRA and not getting a deduction, is not as wonderful as you may think. Let's just take, I'm using very simple numbers here. I'm not being manipulative in any way here, just trying to make it as clear and simple as I could. Suppose that you're in a 40% federal and state and local income tax rate, marginal income tax rate, the rate you pay on the last couple $1,000s of taxable income. And let's say you have $60 of extra cash, just to keep the numbers small and really simple to remember. You could put $100 into a pre-tax IRA, because if you put $100 into that pre-tax IRA, into the IRA, you get an immediate tax deduction of $40. So this is the lovely thing about contributing to IRAs. Getting that tax deduction, it allows you to put more money in this year, or to have more money to do something else with. That tax deduction lowers your taxes, and that's more cash today into your pocket. That's not true with a Roth contribution. With a Roth contribution, you don't get a deduction. So the choice here is, the way to think about this is, do you want to put $60 into a Roth and pay $40 in taxes, or do you want to put $100 into a traditional IRA and not pay taxes? And boy, that sounds like this is a no-brainer, that you ought to go with the IRA and get that $40 tax reduction. But let's just do some math here, and let's just say that for every dollar you put in, over the next 10 years or whatever, it doubled in value. So your $100 IRA contribution goes up to $200, and your $60 Roth contribution only goes up to $120. But here's the joy of investing in a Roth, and that is that you don't have to pay taxes when you pull the money out. With an IRA, you do. So staying with that 40% tax bracket, and that's an important point here, if your tax bracket is stable, when you pull out that $200 from that $100 that doubled, you're only going to get $120 after all, which is great. You doubled your $60 into $120. But the same thing's going to happen with a Roth account. It's going to accumulate to $120, but you don't have to pay any taxes. Here's the point I'm making. The deduction of a regular IRA as opposed to a Roth IRA gives you this illusion that you're going to be far better off in the long run. But if your tax rates are stable, it doesn't matter which type of IRA you use. And if your taxes are going up, then you're better off investing in the Roth. And if your taxes are going down, you're better off investing in the pre-tax IRA. We're going to come back to that. So what the whole point here is that which account is better depends upon the ratio between your current and future tax rates. If your tax rates are going up, you're better off with Roth. If your tax rates are going down, you're better off with pre-tax IRAs. We tend not to be very good at forecasting tax rates. When I say we, I mean humans, not Biltmore Capital. We tend to think taxes are always going to go up, but in my lifetime, they've been consistently going down. And worries, I think, even today, are that tax rates are going to go up. I wouldn't be too much concerned about that unless your income was above $400,000 a year. That's the promise. So let's talk about tax deferral. How good is tax deferral? That idea that instead of paying income tax on interest and dividends each year, if it's inside of a retirement account, you don't pay taxes on that interest and dividends until it's withdrawn. Well, I did this with a 6% interest rate, and with taxes at 40% leaves you with 3.6% growth if it's not inside of a retirement wrapper. And it shows that in 5 years, it'll go up to 119, and it continues down here. And over on the right-hand side, it's showing you that if you put the money into an account that has tax deferral, forget the deduction, just that you're going to get a tax deferral. You don't have to pay taxes until it comes out. The money grows on an, if you pull the money out after 5 years, you're only $1 better off with the tax deferral. If you 10 years, you get $5 better off. 20 years, you're $29 better off. And with 40 years, you're $245 or so better off. The point here is that tax deferral is a good thing. But the deferral that we're talking about here is this ability to not pay income taxes on interest and dividends until you withdraw the money. It's good, but it really only takes a lot of power if you can get it into very long periods of time, or even intergenerational. So that's putting that in perspective. Now this slide is simply showing the tax rates for 2020. And as you can see, we have a graduated tax system that you pay 0 taxes up until you've covered your deduction and standard deduction and stuff. And then you pay tax rates at 10, 12, 22, and it shows the rates. The big thing I draw your attention to here, and we'll talk about it later, is there's a big jump between 24 and 32, between 326,000 and more than 326,000. Because of this, this is the most important part of the whole webinar, believe it or not. Because of this graduated tax system, the focus, the big overriding picture on doing good tax planning is to try to smooth your income. Let's take a look at a numerical example of this. Here, instead of making the taxes, the income go up each year, I made it erratic by going from 200,000, then you get $500,000, then you get an income of 200,000. That totals 900,000, and your taxes would be about $197,000. But if you could smooth your income to only pay $300,000, the same amount of total income, you pay 10% less taxes, $180,000. So the goal, the big overriding picture of how to do a good financial plan is that we want to have smooth income. And we get smooth income by trying to come up with deductions during our very high tax years, high income years. And for instance, maybe doing a conversion that I'll talk about later on when we're in our low tax income years. Although almost everything I'm talking about here is about taxes, and taxes are important, another important thing to think about is that when you contribute income to a RISA plan, you might be better protected from creditors and litigators. Now, the ultimate protection against creditors and lawsuits is to declare bankruptcy. And bankruptcy is primarily a state issue. I reside in the state of Florida, and the state of Florida is very friendly to investors. They can't take, to some extent, they can't take your house, and they can't take any of your retirement assets. So this gives tremendous advantage to having your money into retirement plans if you reside in the state of Florida. In other states, that's not true. So that's on a state-by-state issue, and when I lived in other states, I carried a lot of liability insurance. I'm not carrying as much liability insurance now because, frankly, most of my assets are protected because it's inside of retirement accounts. Other issues in financial planning include there's a lot more taxes than the federal and state and local income taxes I've been talking about. There's Social Security taxes on wages and taxes on Social Security receipts. There are now Medicare taxes, the 3.8% tax on your investment income above an annual income of $250,000. And what a lot of people aren't aware of is that the Medicare premiums that you pay when you go on Medicare are dependent upon how much money you make. And it's really a lot of money for Medicare if you're a high income person. So these taxes are designed to transfer wealth from from the wealthy families to low wealth families. I'd like to say I view it as they're transferring wealth from people who are contributing a lot to society to people who aren't contributing a lot to society. But we need to take these things into account. Even municipal interest is now taxed at tax rates of up to 10%. Municipal interest is taxed through Medicare insurance premiums. And when you combine that with maybe state and local income taxes, where you might have to pay taxes on out-of-state municipal bonds, you might be paying a 10%, if you're a retired person on Medicare, you might be paying a 10% tax on municipal interest. And we talk about municipal interest as being tax-free. It's not tax-free. And then there's estate taxation. There are so many issues involved with taxes. If you get a chance to take advantage of this opportunity to talk to one of our investment advisors, it's absolutely free. You can begin to explore all these issues and how they should be taken into account in your financial plans. The recent change was made. They're constantly changing these laws. It's hard to keep up when you've been watching them as many years as I have. But they passed the Secure Act a year or two ago, and it had just 3 changes related to IRAs that are significant. One is your required minimum distributions. This is when you begin to be forced to take money out of your IRA, not your Roth IRA, but your traditional IRA. Starting, it used to be at age 69.5, then they raised it to 70.5, and now they've raised it to 72. This is a little more opportunity to deferral. I gave it one smiley face. That was nice. We get an extra year and a half not to take RMDs, required minimum distributions. You're also allowed to make some expanded use of IRA contributions past age 70.5. Once again, that can increase your deductibility and deferral. I gave it one smiley face. But they took away a huge tax advantage that existed with IRA money, regular and especially Roth, and that is to pass your retirement money as an inherited Roth account or as an inherited traditional IRA directly to your heirs, and they wouldn't be required to take out the money right away. In fact, they could stretch that inherited IRA all the way through their life expectancy. So this is under the old law. If you died now and passed your IRAs directly through to your grandchildren, they might be able to get tax deferral all the way through their lifetime, which could be another 80, 90, 100 years. And especially when we're talking about a Roth account, having money in a Roth account is beautiful. Each dollar in your Roth account is worth more than $1 because it's $1 that you don't ever have to pay income taxes on unless they change the laws. So this Roth money is precious money, and you could stretch that over your heirs' entire life. So if you put the money in when you're 50 and then you died when you were 90 and gave it to a great grandchild who lived, you could be stretching the taxes out tax-free investing for 150 years or more. Unfortunately, they took that away, and all that's left now is that if a child or a grandchild inherits an IRA, this isn't for a spouse, but if a child or a grandchild inherits a Roth or a regular IRA, they have to take all that money out within 10 years. Well, they could hold all the way off for 10 years and then take it out there. In the case of an inherited Roth, that's exactly what I would do, is hold on to it for 10 years. You'd get 10 more years of tax-free growth after the original person contributed it. So money that I put into a Roth IRA 20 years ago, if I died 20 years from now, pass it on to my heirs, they would get another 10 years of this tax-free growth. It's fantastic. Secure stands for this. I think it really stands for something, for that other acronym I made up, because I really think that this taking away the stretch IRA is what they were really trying to do. They threw us a few bones here and then took away the meat right there. So that was a good metaphor. So in summary, the primary goal, not at the end here, but the primary goal is to smooth our marginal income tax brackets. So 3 ways to do that are: we want to move taxable withdrawals. So don't pull money out of your taxable out of your IRAs, traditional IRAs, from high tax years to subsequent low tax years. So don't pull your money out in your high tax years. Pull your money out of your taxable IRA in your low tax years. And by doing that, you're going to be bumping up your tax in your low tax years, keeping your income, taxable income low in the other year, not too high in your other years, and smoothing it. So to smooth your income, pull money out of your IRAs in your low tax years. Then you can defer taxes by having your investment income. That helps you to smooth. And the whole point here is to smooth your marginal tax rates by smoothing your annual income. The warning in this is it's really hard to predict what future tax rates are going to be. And as I indicated earlier, there tends to be a little bit of a tendency for us to fear that tax rates are going to go up. They're going to go up a lot. They're going to go up quickly. I remember when Obama was elected, people were afraid their tax rates were going to go so high. And some tax rates did go up, but they didn't go up enough to actually warrant having taken an awful lot of money out in 2008. That would have been a bad decision in retrospect. It's like a tennis match between the tax collectors and the taxpayers, or the legislators and the taxpayers. We're trying to find ways to get away from paying taxes, and they're trying to close the loopholes. And the tax legislators inject tremendous uncertainty. So it prevents us from being really precise in our tax planning. The way that I view this, other than a battle between tax collectors and taxpayers, with the tax collectors using uncertainty to their favor, that's the point I was trying to get at, is they don't want to carve in stone the tax rules, because if they carve them in stone and leave them unchanged, we could really do good planning. As it is, our planning really has to take into account the uncertainty that tax rates and tax laws can change. We should view that in a portfolio wealth management context as risk factors. We have lots of risk factors in our economy: interest rates, inflation, equity prices. But another risk factor that we face is tax rate and tax law changes, because when tax rates go up, our wealth goes down, just like when interest rates go up, bond prices tend to go down. So we can view tax rate changes and tax law changes as risk factors. And just as we like to do in all cases of wealth management, we want to diversify our risk factors. So we don't want to put all of our money into bonds, because then we'll be overly subject to interest rate risk. We don't want to put it all into equity, perhaps, because we might be overly subject to the equity risk factor. Well, what we want to do in our tax planning is to use a variety of strategies such that we're only partially exposed to different risk factors. If we put all of our money in and build up tremendous IRA wealth, then we're subjecting ourselves to a lot of risk that they're going to pass some really bad tax rules and that would severely affect IRA holders. So we want to diversify across the sort of risk, the sort of tax changes that might come along, so that we're not overly exposed to a particular legislative change that might occur. I alluded to these before. We want to be really careful about the variety of income taxes that there are now. There's a Medicare investment tax that you pay 3.8% on your investment income above and beyond your income taxes, a surcharge of 3.8% for every dollar that you earn above $250,000 a year, to the extent that you have investment income. And investment income here would refer to capital gains and dividends and interest. Talked about before, people on Medicare pay a premium. This is a ballpark figure. If you're a single individual, the tax rate is about 3.8%. If you're a couple, it's about 7.6% on income over $170,000. And this includes municipal interest, long-term capital gains, and qualified dividends as well. But it even includes municipal interest. So you take your gross, your adjusted gross income, and you add in municipal interest, and you can be paying 7.6% tax on your municipal securities. So, in another way, they tax Social Security now. The Social Security didn't used to be taxed because you paid taxes when you're in the money. But now they'll tax 85%. It varies, but up to 85% of your Social Security income. And this comes in playing around $50,000 to $80,000, depending upon whether you're single or married. And it's strange, but the highest income tax, federal income tax bracket faced by anybody in this country is actually Social Security recipients who are earning $50,000 to $80,000 a year. Because for every dollar they earn, they not only pay income tax on that dollar, they have to pay tax on 85 cents of their Social Security. So that their tax bracket is really 1.85 times what they think it is if they don't take that into account. This shows where tip number one, that a married working couple might do well to target your income around $350,000. Now, look, that you need to talk to a professional and really work this through carefully with a financial plan. That's what I urge you to do for a variety of reasons. But as a ballpark starting figure, to just give you an idea of the opportunities that might be available, if you're a married working couple, I think what you should try to do is target an income of $350,000 a year. Now, you may be so wealthy that you could never get your income that low, or you may have modest enough incomes that you would never get your income that high. But to a lot of somewhat high income people, this is kind of a magic number. Why? Because your marginal tax rates over here on the left are really low up until you get to $326,000. Now, when you add in the $25,000 standard deduction, it takes you to about $350,000. Once you start going above that number, the tax rate jumps 8% up to 32%. So if you can, so I've talked about smoothing your income. Pre-Medicare, before you're taking Medicare, before you're 65 years old, this is a really good number to try to keep your taxes below. Try to keep your income, taxable income, below $350,000. Some of you, in fact, may not be able to do that, and some of you could never get this much. But you might be, here's the point, you might be reluctant to put a lot of money into retirement until your taxable income is $326,000. If my taxable income is only $100,000, I don't think I want to put money into a traditional IRA because the tax break I'm getting is only 22%. I ought to be better putting that off into a Roth IRA and letting it grow tax-free. And if you're above $326,000, you want to put as much money into your IRAs as you can to try to bring it down to $326,000. Actually, if you're way up here, you might want to try to smooth it into some other area here. But this is a good number to try to target for smoothing if you're in that sort of wealth range. So that's tip number one for when you're still working. Tip number two is if you're a retired couple, of course on Medicare, you might do well to target $175,000 of taxable income. That's including municipal interest. Once again, this is more complex than I'm making it sound. I'm trying to give you the sort of takeaways that you could take to a financial advisor and work with them on, and it may or may not be applicable to you. But starting at age 63, you want to be careful about having more than $175,000 of taxable income, including municipal interest. Why? Well, they use your income from when you're 63, and then when you're at age 65, and you start to draw Medicare, they look back at your income from a year or two earlier, and they use that income on the basis to set your Medicare costs. And your Medicare premiums can be anything from virtually free if you're low income to $1,000 a month if you're a high income married couple. So it's a non-trivial amount of money. It starts at age 63. Now, if you retire at 65 and go on Medicare, you can file this form to try to get them to look not at your income at 63 or 64, but rather the income you'll have after you're retired at age 65. These are the sorts of issues that are more important. Our parents didn't have to worry about these because there weren't so many taxes that were so all fired high, you know, they keep on adding these extra taxes, and it makes it so difficult to understand your tax situation and the changes that you might make to make yourself better off. So the three questions I started at the beginning were when to contribute to a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. You contribute to Roth IRAs in low taxable income years, and that's what the last slide was about, was kind of explaining what low taxable income years might look like. And you want to contribute to traditional IRAs in high income tax years to bring this taxable income down. When would you want to withdraw money from a Roth or a traditional? You try not to withdraw it ever from a Roth. I'd say that's the asset you most want to leave to your heirs. So I would only withdraw it if it's the last resort from a Roth IRA when you're in a very, very high income tax year. And you should, if you have to withdraw, you should pull the money out of traditional IRAs. But a real important thing to try to do is try to convert your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA when you're in relatively low income tax years. A Roth conversion simply means that you're going to take, let's say, $50,000 that's inside of your IRA, your traditional IRA. You're going to move it into a Roth account, and you're going to have to pay income taxes on that. But once you've paid those income taxes, they say they'll never tax that dollar again coming out of the Roth account. So hopefully that stays true, and even if they change their rules, you could pull it out before the change takes effect, I'm sure. I hope. I hope this has been helpful to you. Again, this is a really complicated issue. The most important point that I think I've tried to make clear is that the starting point to a good financial plan relative to taxes is to try to smooth your income, so taxable income, so that you can keep your marginal tax rate at the lowest constant level, rather than paying really high taxes in your high income years and have a low tax rate in your low tax years. I hope this has been helpful. It's a very complex issue. If you completely understood all of these issues today, they'll change the rules again in another year or two, and you're back to square one. So we have financial advisors that would be happy to explain these things in the context of your specific situation, and I hope you take advantage of that. I really appreciate you tuning into the webinar, and I'd let you know that I'm always available to talk to our clients, or if you're interested in possibly becoming a client. I love talking about financial stuff, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Thank you for tuning in.